Hello YouTube! I'm username FANKENSTEIN-189, and I really like comic books, as you can see from this shelf to the left of me, and this huge wall of, oh my god, what's all this mess over here? Yeah, I really like comic books. I like all different kinds, too. I like horror, I like fantasy, I like sci-fi, slice of life, comedy. Lately I've been reading Transmetropolitan by Warren Ellis and The Boys by Garth Ennis. But of course there's a special place in my heart for superheroes, and I bet that's true for a lot of you too, as well, seeing as Marvel Studios has made roughly enough money to purchase Australia by now. And DC Comics will soon be making baby steps towards catching up with the MCU with their own films, starting with the sequel to Man of Steel called Superman vs. Batman: The Dawn of Justice. So let's talk about Batman here for a second. Batman's my favorite superhero. And I'm sure that's true for most of you. You're all probably familiar with his animated series from the early 90s and his immensely popular Arkham video game trilogy. Yes, I did say trilogy because fuck Arkham Origins. And if you did your extra credit homework, you might also be familiar with Batman's animated films. You might have heard that some of them are based off the actual comics. Don't get too excited though, because watching the movies doesn't count towards reading the books, because if it did, that would also mean that watching the Harry Potter films is the exact same thing as reading the books, and I'm sure none of you Potter peeps are ready to admit that just yet, are you? Didn't think so. However, one of the most important Batman stories of all time got an animated adaptation, which is why I'm addressing you all today. I'm talking, of course, about The Dark Knight Returns, which was written in 1986 by Frank Miller, the visionary genius behind Sin City, Ronin, 300, and Batman Year One. In addition to writing these fabled stories, Miller also had a memorable run on Daredevil that turned the character from not particularly noteworthy Scarlet Swashbuckler into the gritty, intense, complex hero that we have today, who I'm sure you all have seen the Netflix series of. By the way, CW, if you're watching, that's what a superhero series should look like. It should be character-driven. It should be interesting. It shouldn't be this episodic villain of the week, oh my god, I wish Iris would fall in love with me bullshit. Seriously, get your shit together. Anyways, fresh out of revitalizing old Hornhead, Miller turned to Batman, continuing the work on the character that Denny O'Neil made back in the 70s. Miller dived deep into the dark side of the mythos and brought Batman back from the campy world of Adam West. But unlike O'Neil, who merely restored the serious crime noir horror tones of the franchise, Miller started dissecting the mind behind our masked manhunter, and it turns out there's a lot of gunk up here between the ears. Let's take a look. DKR tells the story of Bruce Wayne, 10 years retired from crime fighting. The villains all locked away. Gotham is still besieged by rampant crime, now in the form of a city-wide gang of troubled youth calling themselves the Mutants. Police are overwhelmed by their numbers and their random senseless brutality, and so Bruce slips back into the cape and cowl to once again take up the fight against injustice, which should be awesome, right? Well, it's not. It sucks. As it were, Bruce hasn't exactly been mentally or emotionally stable since, well, ever. Like, dude's seriously fucked in the head. And his dual identity as Batman might be a symptom of his illness rather than a treatment. It might be an obsessive, paranoid, narcissistic, delusional, and violent response to the trauma he endured as a child. For you film buffs out there, think Ralph Fiennes' character from Red Dragon. Is that how you pronounce his name? Ralph Fiennes? Ralph Fiennes? I don't know. That one guy. DKR proposed for the first time ever that Batman may be more quixotic than heroic. An insane fool, possibly more insane and dangerous than his adversaries. He may very well in fact be inspiring costume criminals who formerly hadn't existed by being Batman. He may be inspiring legions of young people to follow in his footsteps in the form of his sidekick Robin, and the former members of the Mutants becoming the Sons of the Batman, who enact vigilante justice on the guilty and innocent alike. DKR's message is that Batman is a knight-errant who is fighting something that he can not only never defeat, but is in fact actively instigating. Not so totally awesome and infallible now, is he, fanboys? So the climax of the series shows Superman being summoned to contain Batman by force in one of the most memorable scenes in all of comicdom. Never before had these two titans fought each other, and as you can well imagine, everyone thinks Superman's gonna win. Because, like, I mean, come on, he's Superman. Like, Batman's cool and all, but Superman invents new superpowers every friggin' day, it seems. So, like, you can bet that everyone shit themselves inside out when Batman actually pulls out the win. Using his wicked cunning and his ability to plan 5 steps ahead of his opponents, Batman had Supes on the ropes. And then he fakes his own death by heart attack, thus freeing him and his army of teenagers to prepare in secret for the time in the future when their brand of uncompromising justice would be needed most. Which is both awesome and kind of sad at the same time. So Dark Knight Returns came out roughly the same time as Alan Moore's Watchmen and the less memorable but still significant Squadron Supreme by Mark Grunwald. These, coupled with Alan Moore's work on the classic character Miracle Man just a few years prior, totally rocked the world of comics and the superhero genre itself. Not since the Silver Age revival with Stan Lee had comics been so completely revolutionized, and for the first time ever, comics were getting attention from the mainstream media. With a more adult fan base stepping forward, the industry of comics began attempting to cater to more mature readers, something that wasn't new to comics but was certainly becoming more of a focus. One of the ways publishers attempted this was simple rebranding. Just like Hasbro called their G.I. Joe toy line action figures rather than dolls to appeal more to boys, Marvel and DC started publishing what they called graphic novels, to convince adults that they weren't buying those childish comic books that their 10-year-old peers collected. But if we're being honest, they're just bigger, longer, more expensive comics, and anyone who insists that there's a difference is a wanker. I mean, let's shoot straight here. They're a wanker. They're a pretentious asshole. Sorry. The subject matter was also hit with a bit of a darkening too, to involve less plots about freeze rays and time machines, and more plots involving sex, drugs, and ultraviolence. Again, these weren't new elements, but their frequency certainly received a real bump. But these led to an insurgence of some truly spectacular comic bookery, many of which were published through DC's subsidiary company Vertigo. A few of these fine examples include V for Vendetta and Saga of the Swamp Thing by Alan Moore, Animal Man, Doom Patrol, and Batman Arkham Asylum by Grant Morrison, The Books of Magic and The Sandman by Neil Gaiman, Hellblazer, which features the infamous John Constantine by Jamie Delano, Shade the Changing Man by Peter Milligan, Fables by Bill Willingham, the aforementioned Transmetropolitan, and one of my personal favorites, Preacher by Garth Ennis, which will hopefully become a successful TV series on AMC in 2016, provided Seth Rogen doesn't fuck it up. Seriously, Seth, like that trailer, it barely resembles Preacher. Don't fuck this up, man. I got a lot riding on this. I need a cool comic book TV show to compete with The Walking Dead, because all my in-laws love The Walking Dead, and I need something cool to show them that's not The Walking Dead. Seriously. Do this right for me, man. But life was not all pale gossamer-laced beauties and bitterly discarded cigarettes. Over at Marvel, the creators had taken to emphasizing their hyper-masculine, mega-aggressive characters. Wolverine, Ghost Rider, Punisher, they all started hogging the spotlight in some mediocre to not particularly awesome stories. This era also saw Todd McFarlane and Rob Liefeld bring forward some fan-favorite characters like Cable, Venom, and Deadpool. Yay! Right before breaking away from Marvel to form Image Comics to crank out a cavalcade of garbage comics. Yay. Some works like Youngblood, Wetworks, Gen 13, Wildcats, and my personal favorite, Spawn! See, there he is. There's Spawn. He's kind of cool. Sort of. So, I guess if you want to get technical, Deadpool only exists because Batman is awesome. So say thank you, Deadpool fanboys. Thank you. Thank you, Batman, for being awesome. You're so cool. You're welcome, Deadpool fanboys. So a bittersweet legacy to be sure, but all of that is just the prelude to the infamous Dark Knight sequel. Or should I say, sequels? Brr, 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 brr. Come back next time for part 2, where we discuss how Frank Miller's brain fell out somewhere along the line, how his sequel to DKR is an absolute mess, and what we have to look forward to with the upcoming 3rd installment to his Dark Knight saga. Or I guess, currently coming 3rd installment. Anyways, this is FANKENSTEIN 189, signing off.